All right, we are back working on the trailer. So the first thing I want to do is I want to put the vents that I was thinking about in the back. So as I was saying before, I believe the air coming off the side kind of fluctuates around and creates like a vacuum against the back right here. So I want to utilize that and put some vents right here that'll start sucking some of the air out as we're driving. And then if you remember when we were running the water tests, I would have this back door cracked open. So hopefully this will also help the dehumidifier from pressurizing the whole inside of the trailer itself. So a vent here and a vent here. The reason I'm putting them right there and not right there is because when we open this up, so the vent would be about right here. And typically that's not a place that we're walking necessarily. So we usually walk about the center right here. So hopefully that vent will be in this area right here. But let me show you what I found. You know, it's been so long. I think, 4 or 5 months since we've done anything with the trailer. And look at this. It's hanging out at 100%. Pretty crazy. Let me fire the whole thing up. All right. Let's turn on some lights so I can show you what I got. Okay, so the vents that I found are these guys right here. So this is a 4-inch vent. Now, it took a while of hunting down just what I thought would look good from the outside of the trailer. So this is for a dryer vent, but it's pretty heavy duty. Like, you know, this is solid aluminum. So this is what you would see from the outside, and I think it'll look pretty good. This is also kind of slightly under 4-inch. So this took a lot of going back and forth at the hardware stores just to find pieces that I would need. So on the top right here, I was kind of thinking of a kind of like just a floor drain cover. The problem with that is none of them were going to work, and you kind of needed almost like a 5-inch floor drain so that way it was bigger than everything so I bought a 4-inch hole saw. Let me just back up here. So I bought a 4-inch hole saw. So you basically need about a 5-inch floor drain so that you could screw it into this, because otherwise the 4-inch floor drain covers, the screws are kind of inboard, which would be directly in the hole of this whole thing. So, or you could go all the way up to 6-inch, and most of them I wasn't really liking. I was getting pretty close to just buying sheet metal and just drilling holes and making my own drain. But then I found these, thankfully. Supposedly these are stainless steel. So this is the wall mount for a dryer. And so instead of having anything that would obstruct flow from this side, these are just going to go into the floor like this, and then you'd see this from the other side. And then somewhere in the middle of that, I found these little extensions at the hardware store, and you can pry it around this and it'll fit pretty good. There you go, just kind of pressed it on around there. So I could beat that on the rest of the way, but we'll just leave that for now. So what my thought is that it would be like this, and obviously this is too long. I think if we cut this in half, we'd probably get enough for both of them. I did buy 2 just because they were kind of hard to find. And then from the other side, we're going to have, see, this already fits on the, yeah, see, even with the wrapper, this, all right, sorry. So even with the wrapper, this already fits. So in a way, this is like what you'd be seeing. And the reason I want a tube on there is because we're going to be tracking dirt on here and stuff like that. And I'd rather just be able to vacuum dirt out from this cage rather than it continually going in and filling up the cavity of this door. That would not be cool or ideal. So this is what my idea is. I looked to see if I couldn't just buy a PCV pipe or ABS pipe. Not happening. It is way too expensive now. I don't know what that stuff is made out of or why people are charging so much for it, but wow. So these pieces at Home Depot were $7 each, compared to the $30 they'd want for the smallest piece of 4-inch ABS pipe. So yeah. So this is what I'm using. I guess I could show you what this is going to look like. So instead of trying to I did get Gorilla Ultimate adhesive. So instead of just trying to glue this into place, I'm thinking that I want to, this already has nice little cast marks that are pretty well lined up to 90 degrees of each other. So I'm going to drill all these out, and so it'll just be bolted in. I guess the other thing you could do is right there is like a side bolt hole on the side of this that you could utilize as well. I think I'll just bolt it in from the outside. I'm not quite sure everything that's inside of this door. So I know it's really thick plywood on this side, but I don't know that there's anything on the other side other than the sheet metal and the metal. And hoping that this hole saw will be able to go through it. Usually, if you go slow, it'll do it. But as you can see, it's a skosh bigger than all of this. So, and usually when these are cutting, they're never like perfectly cutting out like a beautiful hole. Usually they're kind of wobbling a little bit. So usually you kind of get like a little bit bigger of a hole. So just keep in mind, there'll be a link in the description for everything I'm using. This, the vents. So they sell these vents in a 4-inch, a 5-inch, and a 6-inch. So these are, I think they just have that nice enough look where it just looks like something interesting, you know, not too, I don't know. I just like the way it looks a lot better than almost anything else I saw. And not to mention, it feels pretty stout. All right, so upon further inspection of these right here, I think they sent me the wrong ones because these are not stainless. They're like they're definitely painted. Got some kind of coating on them. I ordered stainless specifically because of, anyway, so I'm gonna order these again, and if they don't ship them, if they don't ship the stainless ones, then I'm gonna have to figure out something else for this part of the build, because these would be going somewhere right around this region right here. So I think for now, I'm gonna drill out the back, and maybe I'll order some floor drains that would fit, and then see if I just can modify them. But so the other thing I wanted to talk about these vents right here, you can get them, this has a fly, what they're calling a fly grill in it. And they also have one that has a rodent grill in it. So the rodent one is like really thick and has bigger squares. Either one of these, you can knock this out if you don't want it. I'm gonna leave it in there just so no flies can come in. But before I'm knowing that I need to drill this out, I want to drill the hole for this first to see what's on the inside of this, because when I drilled out that anchor right there, this was pretty thick, and then it was just an empty cavity. So I just want to make sure what's on the outside, because as I was pushing on it, it felt like it had some not a lot of give to it. So I'm not sure if it's skinned on both sides with wood or what. And if it is, maybe I would use these little holes right here. But I think it's time to go ahead and measure it out and drill some holes. All right, so I'm just going to show you how I'm measuring this. Definitely using one of these speed squares right here. So I'm basically going 15 inches down, and then I'm going 6.5 inches over. It's just what kind of feels right. So 6.5 inches over, 15 down. Let me show you what that means for this. It means this guy is going to be right about there. Show you from way over here. It's going to be right about there. And then that still leaves a decent amount of room around it hopefully. Really hard to say how far this structure goes in, because I don't know. Like, this all feels pretty hard. Right here, it kind of has a little bit more give, but then it stops. So I'm not really sure what's on the other side of that. I don't really remember. But I'm kind of thinking right there, because that's out of the way of most everything. And then if we kind of pull this down and try to guesstimate where that's going to be, it's going to be probably in this range right here. So that's not too bad. You know, I'm thinking I'm also going to order the normal floor drains, just in case those could be here by tomorrow too. Because maybe we'll just go with those if these other ones still don't come stainless. So I'm just going to double check my measurements, and then we are good to go. And I have another trick of how to make sure that the hole you're drilling right here pops out on the other side right there. It's pretty much just using a longer drill bit, but so I'm going to drill this all the way through first. That way I can come through this way with the hole saw, and then I can come this way through with the hole saw. All right, so what I'm going to do first is center punch it so that the drill has a nice spot to dig into. All right, this being aluminum, it kind of already hits that pretty hard. And then one of the other secrets is the speed square. So if you're not sure if you're going in exactly at 90, you can walk this around as you get in there. All right, so it looks like it's wood right when I first get in there. So it's just the skin, and then there's wood. So that's good to know. So that there should be no problem with the that hole saw getting through that. All right, so that looks pretty good so far, I think. So you can make adjustments as you would need to. So some of the big things are, you want to make sure you're going in straight and not like this or like this, because otherwise your holes just aren't going to line up. So I do have the door spaced out because I have the refrigerator and the air fryer on the other side. So that would not be a good day to drill through those. Also, this drill is smaller than the drill for the hole saw. So that's another thing to consider there. So I think that's one of the best ways to see whether you're fully lined up. All right, both sides are drilled out. Now I got this, and make sure you turn your drill all the way down. Go very slow. All right, here we go. So you can see it's working, but you just gotta go really slow. Take your time with it. So we've almost got this out. So just you can kind of work it around a little bit, put a little bit more pressure on the bottom. Just be careful. All right, so now we got that out. So now I would take this out of here, because this is just that's just gonna jam you up. So this should be pretty straight shooting now. Look at that. All right, so we got out that piece. So it looks like on the end here, it's almost completely solid. So maybe we don't need some of the stuff that we bought. So I think now I'm just gonna drill it out from the other side. Oh, there we are. All right, we got it all the way through. It's very interesting because when I drilled out right here, it was hollow, but right here is not hollow. Oh man, I think that looks pretty snazzy. Kind of liking that right there. So I guess what I could do is I could just run screws into the side right here, since we'd be going into the plywood there. I could put a little bit of so I could cover this whole area with the construction adhesive and then put some in there. And then it could even get some clamps on this, clamp it down and then screw it in there. And then not have to drill the outside and just have that much cleaner of a look. I think I might just do that. That might look a lot better. So yeah, I might not need a lot of the parts that I bought. So just kind of rather have them and not need them kind of thing. But all right, that worked out pretty well right there. So I guess I'm gonna go ahead and drill out this guy now. Man, my arm hurting the way that thing torques around. But there's the aluminum skin and here's solid plug. So hole saw's pretty good. All right, so I got them both drilled out. And this one, of course, right where I would put the side screw in, there's nothing there. So I'm gonna need to figure that one out before I move forward. So I could probably just put a piece in here and then just clamp it and glue it before I do anything. But pro tip for you, if you're using a hand drill and you got such a giant thing right there, if you put it on this right here, and that's for drilling, if you put it on that, when this thing torques out, it's gonna rip your wrist off. So if you just put it at 15, the clutch will kick in and it won't rip your wrist off. So just keep that in mind. So what I'm gonna do now, since this looks, I'm actually more happy about this than I thought I would be. Like, I mean, I think that looks pretty snazzy. Probably just gonna put some pieces of wood in there, put a wood clamp, and then just build it up and glue it and let it sit. So that way, when I put this in, it'll have something to sit against. I did look at this in here and it doesn't look bad. It's just, so this is what I was thinking. I don't think that looks bad. I think the issue is this isn't stainless. So I'm gonna see if I can't find some floor drains. I just like how much this one would flow personally. So I'm gonna see if I can't find some floor drain. I did reorder this in stainless, which this was supposed to be. So I think I'll just see what comes in tomorrow. And then I'm also gonna go and see about ordering some floor drains to see if those can come in too. Realistically, this hole, even though it's a 4-inch hole saw, this is over 4-inch. So I would need like a 5-inch drain, and 5-inch drains just aren't that common. So I'm gonna have to look for like a 6-inch drain, which isn't too bad. It would just kind of overhang a little bit. But I was thinking about drawing around it and then taking the router so that the drain would be flush, and then wouldn't have to worry about any of the kids stepping, or, I mean, I'd hope they wouldn't trip over this, but you know, they're kids. All right, so I'm gonna pick this up tomorrow when I get my shipment from Amazon in. If I glue anything in there tonight, I'll bring it back in for that. All right, so I just got some pieces that I cut out here, chopped them up so that they would fit, and then I'm probably gonna have to run the hole saw kind of back through it to get this part. And I'm gonna wipe up all the glue, but just kind of let it sit there and cook. And I'm pretty sure that should be fine to hold this. Not too worried about it, but I'll pick you back up tomorrow when all that's nice and dry. All right, it is the next morning. This is all set up now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run the hole saw back through and hopefully trim that off. So this side, there's not a lot for the hole saw to balance or bite into. So this side, this will keep it stable on this side. So I'm gonna run it through this side first. So just gonna take it slow and easy. Got it set on 15. Look at that. That's pretty cool, huh? So now we have somewhere for the other part of that vent to actually bite into. So that's pretty cool. So I think we're gonna install those vents. We're still waiting on Amazon, but at least I can get these installed and the trailer will not have the outside so open to the elements or try to convince somebody that they can break into it. So just gotta find some screws, and now I have a spot for that to bite into, and pretty excited about that. It turned out pretty good. I'm also gonna use the construction adhesive to try and attach the outer skin right here and just weather sealing basically. All right, so I found some screws that I wanna use to screw these in. But if I put these screws into here, since the screws are countersunk, see how it kind of like sticks out of the hole. So obviously I can't really get a countersink in there. So one of the things you can do is just drill the hole out bigger. So on this one, I drilled out the holes bigger. So then that screw sits a bit more, let me try to get it, sits a bit more flush. So you can do this if you want or not, up to you. I'd rather do it because then these are the screws I have and I'm gonna get all that bite out of it. So I'm just drilling these out to size, and I feel like it looks better. Not to mention, because of the head of these screws is Torx, it should be easier to screw in. So I'm just gonna drill out this one and then probably start prepping and cleaning the area so that I can put on the ultimate Gorilla Heavy Duty. All right, so just using isopropyl alcohol just to clean around it, so that way when I put the construction adhesive on, we're sticking to the panel itself and not all the dust and the dirt and all that. All right, so I cut off the tip and some tips before we are ready to go in. The hole saw, as you can see, this has some give. So I'd like this to be in the center of the hole. The other thing too is it might look good if the vents right here were 90 degrees from this. So keep that in mind. I mean, unless you're going for that look, but then I feel like you'd have to replicate it perfectly on both sides. So the other thing too is I'm just trying to get it around the edge right here, not necessarily in here. I was thinking that maybe I'd squirt some in here, maybe try to help hold the inside of this a little bit better. Kind of just throw it in there, work it around with my finger. Oh, I am wearing some nitrile gloves. So then now I'm just gonna work this around. This stuff is so thick that it's pretty difficult if you use the small tips on it. The caulking gun I'm using is one of those ones that, like, I think it's 3 times your power. I'll try to put one in the description. So I'm just working this around. And you do have a pretty good working time with this construction adhesive. Also, when this construction adhesive is on the outside, in my experience, it hasn't yellowed or gotten discolored or anything like that. So I'm also using this as not only what's going to be holding it on there, but also weather sealing. This stuff is a bugger to get out. So I'm going to press it on there, kind of work it all the way around. I will come back and scrape it all off. I'm probably going to do one side at a time. So just dialing it in, making sure it's perfectly square to the door. Stepping back, making sure that looks good. And if I look from the inside, trying to make sure that it is centered in the hole, because I think that that'll help when I'm putting the other piece on. So every time I move it a little bit, I'm making sure that it is still nice and square, which it is. All right, so now I'm gonna try putting in these screws. So these screws will pull it one way or the other. So I think you're gonna have to be careful when you get these screws. Like if I tighten this one down, it'll pull the whole thing that way. The other thing I'm doing is I'm putting this screw as far out on the hole as possible, because then once this starts hitting this, it's gonna wanna try to push it in. And I think that that's gonna be good for holding it in better. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to let it set up before I fully tighten in these screws. But it's gonna be a good practice to get all of this excess off. So you can take a credit card, you can take anything. Also, if you get it on your hands, I first of all recommend wearing nitrile gloves. But if you do get it on your hands, usually alcohol, if you're cleaning your hands with the same alcohol that I clean this whole surface with, that tends to work the best. So I like to use my finger and kind of just scrape it off. Have a paper towel right there. And then kind of just like you're riding your fingernail around. I feel like this kind of works the best for me. As thick as this stuff is and as gooey as it is possible to get a nice finish around it. It just takes a while because this stuff is so thick and tacky, but it does, you are able to get a pretty nice finish around it. It's the same thing we did in the bathroom around the sink. All right, so I think I explained it a little bit wrong. So you're gonna want the screws to be biased as much on that side of the hole. So the hole on the inside as much as possible. So the hole, so you're gonna wanna screw the screw almost at an angle in a way, focusing towards the trailer. So then that way when it ramps up on the countersink of the screw, it wants to pull the vent in. So I dialed it in as much as I think is good, and squaring this up to the outside. As you can see right there, it looks pretty well square, at least with the outside of the door. So if the outside of the door is square, that should be square. So the other thing I found was one of these little scrapers, and I'm gonna go around trying to clean up any of the excess that I can. Also, if there's any gaps or holes, like right there, you can see that's pretty nice now. Any gaps or holes, I'll try to pack this in there, especially on the top, because I'm assuming that's where most of the rain or anything like that would fall. The stuff's already starting to get a little bit tacky. I'm gonna clean all that up, and then I'll start with the other one and apply everything I learned on this side. All right, I think that looks pretty good. So I'm ready to do the other side. I thought I would try and explain better what I'm talking about the head of the screw pulling this in. So if you focus the screw on this side, and as the head of the screw right here, so as this starts following the ramp of the screw, it's going to want to pull it in. If you focus the screw on the inside of this, it'll want to pull it in. If you focus it on the outside, it'll just kind of leave it pushed out. So you kind of want the whole thing pulling itself in. So you want the screw over here as you're screwing it in, and then as it starts to ride up that ramp, if that's not making it clear, just try it out and you'll see what I'm talking about to pull it in. But I'm gonna finish up this side, and then I'll bring you back in. Still no Amazon yet, so fun. All right, so I think I'm just gonna have to go with these. These don't really look stainless, they look coated, but we'll just have to trust Amazon, I guess. So as I measured it, I need about 900 thousandths off of this, so I've already scribed a line going all the way around it, and then I'm just gonna cut it with the bandsaw and see how close I am. So I'm just going to use these snips and then probably bring it closer on the disc sander. Just bring it down to the line because I kind of feel like the little bandsaw I'm using right there is kind of just destroying this thing. So I've marked out my line, and now I'm just trying to chop off all the excess that I can, and then I will just sand it down to the correct dimension. I think that I'm going to get a better looking product by doing it like this in comparison to trying to cut it down with the bandsaw, because the bandsaw seems to be grabbing it and kind of just throwing it. And maybe the same thing will happen with the disc sander, but the other way definitely was not working. So I think the disc sander will make short work of this. The key will be to try to keep it round as it's sanding it, and just psh, 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 psh. All right, so if I go all the way around just touching the line, it should be good. So I'm just gonna deburr the inside and it should be great. Well, there we go. Never had a deburring tool. Works wonders. Let's go double check and see how it looks on the trailer. All right, so here we go. Look at that. Yep. So I think that's going to be perfect. So if anything pushes from the other side, it'll just impact this. And then we'll just line it up so that it matches the other thing perfectly. But I'm going to cut the other one now, and then we'll screw them in. All right, so I got them both cut out. Both relatively the same size. So you see how this could be unlined up to that? I think I'm going to try to line it up like that, and then I'm going to use the square to probably line these holes up to there, and then I am going to pre-drill it out because on some of these we're pretty close to the edge, so just to hopefully stop it from splitting. All right, got that one on. Looks good. See how this gives it like a nice finished look? And there's that one. All right, so we're all done. So the next projects will be an outlet on the side, and then we're gonna do a big scoop, but this is gonna help the trailer to breathe as we're going down the road. And this will create a vacuum, so it'll start sucking out the air, and as we're driving, hopefully the inverter won't just be on the whole time. Also, this should help when we're running the water generator so that the trailer wouldn't be pressurized. So some of the pressure should be leaking off here, but we have a lot to do inside the bathroom. But stay tuned and like, share, subscribe. See you next time.